Okay, let's look at the computer to see what components there are, and we'll focus later on the motherboard itself. Knowing these components, understanding the way they are working, is very important to understand how the operating system works. Alright, let's look at the computer to see what components there are in, and we'll focus later on the motherboard itself. But understanding these components, knowing them, understand how they are work, is very important to understand how the operating system works. Alright, there are many ports at the back of each computer, no matter what are the vendors, no matter what's the model of the computer. There are some common things we can look at behind. Some of these as following. This port is the parallel port. Generally, before it's used to connect a printer. This is a serial port. This is a VGA out port. These two are PS2 ports for the mouse and for the keyboard. Several USB ports, and the network interface port, the sound card, input-output ports, and sometimes if you connect an external controller, it will be appear in the behind, and this is one of them. This is the VGA out. Okay, this is what it looks like from inside any computer. Of course, there are some few changes from different vendors, but typically this is how it looks like from inside. We start with the hard disk. This is a hard disk, where you store your information, and typically it's connected through two ports. One of them, the IDE cable, that's connected directly to the motherboard. I'll show the motherboard later. And the other one is the power cable. This is the CD-ROM or DVD-ROM or writer. This is the floppy disk. It's here connected to the motherboard as well. And this is the power supply. Now, let's look at the motherboard itself. The motherboard has many components attached to it. Mainly, we start with the CPU. This is the central processing unit. I'll show you the processor itself. Of course, this is not the processor. This is the cooling system for the processor to let it cool down because it gets hot. And this is the way we take off a processor. This is the central processing unit, or the CPU. It gets connected directly to the motherboard through its several pins, and it helps control whatever data travel in the motherboard from the components to the processor or the otherwise. Alright, the second important thing in any motherboard is the RAMs, or the memory slots. These basically are the RAMs and how they look like. Small slots that connected also directly to the motherboard, and there are several slots, maybe 2 or maybe 4 in each motherboard, that you can extend the size of the memory as much as you want. Also, there are the connectors that connect any external device like the hard disk or the DVD writer or the floppy disk. They are connected directly to the motherboard through their cables. For example, this is the place where you connect the power supply, the main power supply port to the monitor, to the motherboard. This is the IDE cable that connects the hard disk or the DVD writer to the motherboard, and so on and so forth. Okay, also there are many other devices or controllers you can connect directly to the motherboard, like the VGA card, for example. I'll show you the VGA card, an external VGA card. Sometimes it's difficult to remove. Okay, this is an external controller, a VGA controller. It gets connected to a certain place sometimes PCI, this is an old one, sometimes PCI Express, this is for the new ones, and it helps improve the video input-output ability for the computer itself. Okay, now let's take off the motherboard and see what it looks like individually. Okay, as we can see, this is a typical motherboard. You can see all the controllers here. This is the VGA controller, this is the memory, and this is the processor. And all these controllers need to communicate with each other, and to do that they use buses. Buses are typically wires that are connecting every device or every controller together. There are three types of buses are there. The data bus, which is used to send data from the CPU to the memory or from the memory to the CPU. And there is the address bus, which is used to send the memory address by the CPU to different components. And there is the control bus that is used by the CPU to send the control signals to any other components.